He was a billionaire, feared, untouchable, a man whose name alone could silence a room. She was his maid, quiet, invisible, almost like air. Every evening, just before the sun disappeared, she would walk out of his mansion carrying 2 worn bags. No one noticed her. No one ever asked where she went. But one night, he did. And what he saw when he followed her would not only change the way he looked at her, it would change the way he looked at life itself. This is not just a story about a billionaire and his maid. It's about what happens when you finally see someone, not with your eyes, but with your heart. The city knew him well. Henry Oeni, hotel tycoon, brilliant, cold, a man people respected but never approached. Inside his glass mansion on Queen's Drive, there was one figure who moved like a ghost. Her name was Grace. She was always on time, always quiet. She spoke in whispers, avoided eye contact, and rotated the same 2 dresses every week. She worked, she left, and she disappeared into the night. At first, Henry barely knew she existed. But one golden evening, everything shifted. At 5:45, he spotted her at the front door adjusting the straps of her bags. One bag bulged with food, the other stacked with papers. Suspicion stirred inside him. What could a maid possibly need with documents, he thought. He stepped closer. She jumped. "You're leaving already?" he asked. "Yes, sir. I finished everything." "What's inside the bags?" She hesitated, her eyes dropping. "Just some food, some documents. It's personal." Henry frowned. She had been leaving like this for weeks, and yet she never complained, never explained. That night, he couldn't sleep. He had meetings, contracts, deals worth millions waiting on him, but none of it mattered. All he could see was her small figure walking away, carrying secrets in nylon bags. By midnight, Henry Oeni, who never chased anyone, who never followed anyone, made up his mind. Tomorrow, he would follow her. Not out of anger, not out of suspicion, but out of something far more dangerous: curiosity. The next evening, Henry sat behind the wheel of his black SUV. No driver, no bodyguard, just him, wearing a plain cap and dark sunglasses. At 5:55, Grace walked out, bags in hand, same quiet steps, same plain dress. She didn't hail a cab, didn't stop to chat. She walked with the steady rhythm of someone who had traveled this road 1,000 times. Henry followed, his car gliding behind her like a shadow. She boarded an old yellow bus. He followed in silence. The ride took them into a part of the city Henry hadn't set foot in for years, a neighborhood of broken walls, crowded streets, restless noise. Grace stepped off, walked past crumbling buildings, and slipped through a rusted gate with a faded sign that read, "House of Second Chances, free classes, free meals, free hope." Henry frowned. What was this? He peered through a cracked window, and what he saw stole the breath from his chest. Inside, adults sat on wooden benches, notebooks open in their laps. Market women, laborers, old men with weary eyes. And at the front of the class stood Grace, not scrubbing floors, not washing dishes, teaching. Her hands danced across the chalkboard as she wrote, "Today's lesson, how to fill hospital forms." Her voice was gentle but firm. She knelt beside an elderly man, guiding his hand as he struggled with words. She smiled as he repeated after her. Henry froze. This was not the Grace he knew. This was not a maid. This was a teacher, a giver, a light. He stayed in the car for over an hour, unable to leave. He watched her feed the students afterward with the food from her bag, loaves of bread, sachets of water. He watched her hug a mother with a baby on her back. He watched her give and give and give, even though she herself had so little. And in that moment, for the first time in years, Henry felt something break inside him. Shame, admiration, maybe even longing. That night he couldn't sleep. He read her file over and over. Age 25, no next of kin, no education history, no red flags. Too clean, too quiet. He searched the center online. There she was in a faded blouse, smiling with her students. Beneath the photo was a quote. "We don't need to be rich to make a difference. We just need to care enough to try." Grace Joseph. Henry leaned back in his chair, whispering to the silence, "How did I never see you?" The next morning, Grace walked into his dining room with his breakfast as usual. But something was different. He looked at her and said softly, "Sit." She froze. No boss had ever asked her to do that. She sat at the edge of the chair, her hands trembling. Henry looked into her eyes and said quietly, "I followed you." She gasped. "Sir, I wasn't stealing. I swear I know," he interrupted gently. "I never thought you were. I saw the center. I saw you teaching. I saw you giving away your food." Her eyes widened, filling with fear. "Then why did you follow me?" Henry leaned forward. "Because I couldn't understand how someone with so little could give so much." For the first time, her voice broke. She told him about her father, how he couldn't read, how her mother died because he couldn't fill hospital forms in time, how she built the center for people like him, so no one else would lose someone they loved over something so simple. Henry sat in silence, the weight of her words crashing into him. This was not charity. This was a fight, and she was carrying it alone. From that day on, Henry couldn't see her the same way, not the way she scrubbed his floor or polished his marble counters. He saw her for what she truly was, a leader. Days turned into weeks. Their conversations grew deeper. Henry offered to help, to fund her dream, to build more centers. But Grace shook her head. "I don't want to be rescued. I don't want to become someone's project. I want to build this dream and still recognize myself in it." Her words hit him harder than any boardroom negotiation ever had. She wasn't afraid of poverty. She was afraid of being invisible. And then one day she gave him her notice. She was leaving, not because she was running away, but because she was stepping fully into her purpose. "You made me believe I could," she said softly. Henry stood frozen, watching the only person who had ever made him feel small and human walk away. 2 months passed. The mansion felt colder, emptier, until one evening, a cream-colored invitation arrived, House of Second Chances, special fundraiser and literacy night. Grace had invited him. When Henry walked into the center, he almost didn't recognize it. The rusted gate was painted blue. Lanterns lit up the courtyard. Laughter filled the air. Grace stood in the middle of it all, radiant, alive. The students cheered her name as she took the microphone. "I used to think people like me only cleaned floors," she said. "But now I know, even maids can build movements. Even small stories matter." Her eyes found Henry's across the room. "And to the man who saw me, even when I didn't see myself, thank you." Henry clapped. Not as a billionaire, not as a tycoon, but as a man whose heart had been broken open. After the event, Grace walked over to him, her smile soft. "You didn't have to come?" "I had to," he said. "You invited me." Her eyes searched his. "Was it you? The donation, the letters, the laptop?" "Yes," he admitted. "But I didn't want you to feel bought. I wanted you to feel free." "You gave me more than money," she whispered. "You gave me a mirror." Henry reached into his pocket and handed her a certificate. She unrolled it slowly, her breath catching. Partnership, the House of Second Chances, co-founded by Henry Oeni and Grace Joseph. He looked at her steadily. "This isn't charity. This is purpose, and I want to walk beside you." Then his voice softened. "Also, I'd like to take you to dinner. Not as your boss, not as your partner, but as a man who finally sees you." Tears filled her eyes. "I'd like that," she whispered. Weeks later, the center unveiled a new signboard, bold, bright, unmissable. the Grace Joseph Literacy Center. Changing lives, one voice at a time. Beneath, in smaller letters, co-founded by Henry Oeni and Grace Joseph. As they stood hand in hand under the golden sky, Grace whispered, "I used to think people like me only served food." Henry turned to her with a quiet smile. "Now people like you serve a nation." And together, they walked back inside. Because sometimes, the greatest transformations don't begin with wealth or power or fame. Sometimes, they begin the moment you finally choose to see someone, not with your eyes, but with your heart.